Agency. We would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Say the Housing Authority.
And the Housing Authority. Okay. Put your hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I'd like to take a moment for all of us to remember Bill Hill, who passed away last Thursday. He was 99 years of age. He will be missed. Please be seated. And Mrs. Reddy, the roll call, please.
Councilmember Cassidy. Here. Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Olson.
Here.
And Mayor Marshall.
Here. Presentation.
Well, Madam Mayor and Council, you this evening have a presentation by Dr. Val Frankel, who will discuss with you the feasibility study for Catalina Island desalination treatment system. And I know that we all will look forward to that presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. Adeline Young with Southern California Edison. I'm pleased to be here tonight with my colleague, Kim Brown, who's the project manager for the desalination project. And also with us is Dr. Val Frankel, who will provide an overview of his report, Desalination System Enhancement, Feasibility Study of Catalina Island Desalination Plants 1 and 2. Dr. Frankel is an eminent figure in the water industry and is the vice president at Greeley and Hansen Engineering Consulting, a firm with over 100 years of experience. Dr. Frankel has developed innovative engineering solutions for water, wastewater, water reuse, and solid waste challenges. He has managed nearly 300 projects and authored over 100 publications in the areas of water, wastewater treatment, desalination, and salinity management. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share this report. Edison takes its responsibility to the people who live and work here seriously and shares in the goal to ensure health and economic stability for this community. I do want to let you know that Dr. Frankel will present his report and will be available to answer questions specific to his report. Thank you.
Okay.
And with that, Dr. Frankel.
Yes, so we will be holding so if you have questions, you'll be holding them to the end of his report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Adeline. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council and public. Last fall, we started working with Southern California Edison with a feasibility study of the desalination system, particularly plant number 1, plant number 2. And recently we completed this report, and tonight I want to present the summary of that report. So I hope you have full report. And after that, I'm available to answer your questions.
Thank you.
So, agenda of that presentation outline. So, the review project purpose and goals. Develop the project approach, strategy, and achieve project goals. The current we actually studied the water supply and water demand on the island within the last 10 years prior to 2016. So when we started the project, it means the lifespan from 2006 to 2016. The future demand for 20 years down the road, that's usually how we evaluate in the water supply and desalination capacity for 2035. Why 2035? Because when we started the project 2016 fall, we had a full record up to 2015. So that's the reason why that's not really they mentioned the number exactly. So we developed certain alternatives, and based on the criteria and some assumption, and I'll walk you through that, we evaluated those alternatives, and we recommended one and actually several later on alternatives for the implementation. So summary, comparison of alternatives, and conclusion and recommendation will follow. So the purpose of the and goals of that project, generally we look major purpose of the project to find and recommend reliable potable water supply for city Avalon and potentially Hamilton Cove for today and 20 years down the road for 2035. As you can see on that slide, the city Avalon census from 2000 to 2010, not significant growth as a population, at the local population, which we can say is similar about the tourism. And the city of Avalon census actually of the island, of the entire island, is a majority of population reside within the boundaries of the city of Avalon, as you can see on the numbers on that slide. So we were looking the acceptable solutions, the satisfactory and more feasible. So actually we started from the big picture, looking all possible alternatives, and we narrowed down the most appropriate, and I'll walk you through those. We were looking for the green solution, so economically and environmentally, and we were looking for the balance between demand and supply. In a water systems, desalination, which part of it, like any water system, there is always needs to be found the good balance between supply and demand. Because the reason being that most of the supply system, they try to supply water on a continuous basis while the demand is fluctuating. And we balancing that between the treatment capacity and supply capacity and the storage. And I'll walk you through that. And we developed several alternatives based on those criteria. So, project purpose and goals, evaluate the current. As I already mentioned, that current, it's not just one single data, it's last 10 years. Maximum months demand in water supply, and future, 2035, 20 years down the road, and desalination supply. Evaluate alternatives to meet those demand with desalination and storage capacity, minimizing dependence on the future drought and impact on the city. And identified, recommended an alternative, and whichever narrowed down, to recommend implementation plan. And that is important, not just theoretically, whichever we propose, but how to implement that economically and effectively. We have certain assumptions and constraints and considerations, and those 10 major are listed, and I probably walk through each one. So stakeholders' input has been received based on the demand and forecast on the Avalon development for up to 2035 to the targeted year when the demand we calculated. Coordinated approvals with required agencies that have jurisdictions over the water supply. Allow phased approach to maintain desalination operation capacity not less than the existing today, 230,000 gallon per day capacity. Connection of the desalination distribution to Hamilton Cove will be completed by the time when the plan will be implemented. Consider upgrading existing discharge and adding new system within the existing ocean border to not go beyond the current layout or footprint of the existing facilities. Desalination facility can be operated at higher recovery. Recovery, it means how much clean water you can get out of the supply water. So that terminology we use in technical terminology. So that one of the parameters that can be changed during the operation in the different conditions or inquiries of the plan capacity. System redundancy accomplished with middle range wells and Wrigley Reservoir. Pipeline assumed not feasible from the mainland. It's more than 21 miles to put on a seafloor. Develop additional desalination supply due to drought cycles, and improvements reside in the existing infrastructure. I already mentioned that. owned by Southern California Edison, so not to go beyond the different properties. So, location. The Catalina Island, as you well know, it's an island and located about 21 miles from the mainland. How that reflects in the project, it's more extended project schedule, and that requires a trigger increase in the construction. So to build the same facility or increase it on the mainland in the LA area, as you can realize, everyone can realize, it will be more costly here. Island is highly attracted by tourism. What that means, how that reflects to the facility. So it's a huge or enormous fluctuation in the water demand. In the summer, and I have a few graphs in a few more slides. So the demand on the winter and summer, when the tourism is peak and tourism is low, it's enormous peaking factor between maximum and minimum demand. And that needs to be taken into consideration, not to overbuild facility just for the tourism. And when the tourism is slower, to sit facility dry and not operated. So all those criteria were very carefully taken into consideration in the design, in the proposed feasibility study. We didn't do design, it's just feasibility study phase. So the current or last 10 years maximum monthly day demand of the potable water shown on that graph, the chart. So average day demand on a maximum months, it's been calculated, and that's supported by studies and calculation, is around, it's close to 730,000 gallon per day. The maximum day demand, and that, let me explain you that number, the first number, the small bar, it's a maximum months within last 10 years average day on that maximum months. On the next bar, which is higher, it's a maximum day demand on that maximum months average. And peak hour demand, it's a fluctuations. So if anyone familiar what generally the water demand, it fluctuates. It's more water demand is in the morning times. It's slowing down by noontime. By evening closer to late afternoon, it just increase again till early night, and night time the demand in the water actually is going down. Most people are sleeping, maybe not on the island. So the current maximum demand on existing facilities, and here is just schematically shown what is the existing infrastructure already exists on the island. So there is several wells that most of on the left side of that chart, it's most of the supply is done by water supply by the wells, but that area in the brown, which shown here, is actually it's a centralized pipe together where desalination water is connected and can supply, and that actually. From the entire island, it's more than 80% of the entire water demand in that area. That's the city of Avalon and Hamilton Cove. That's what we discussed. About existing facility. Existing facility located, let me just show if I can, grab it. Okay, existing facility located on the premises of the Southern California Edison on the Pebble Beach, on the left hand from as I'm standing, and it's here just shown the desalination plant number 1, which has been built in early 1990s, so it's quite old facility, and there is a new facility, desalination plant 2 is behind that facility. There is a riprap outfall, brine outfall from that desalination facility. So I did mention that generally the how desalination works. So we take in the seawater, we processing that through the desalination plant, where the key components is reverse osmosis membranes, which are the separating brine or concentrate or salt from the water, and that salt is discharged through the outfall back to the sanctuary, mixing with the ocean water. And clean water is conditioned and supplied to the entire water network. So the plant, the treatment plant, it's shown in that small part of that picture, is supplied today by two wells, well number 1 and well number 2, that located further from on the left hand, that will be on the south of the desalination plant. Regarding the monthly fluctuation of the water demand, it's shown here on that chart. So actually the peak season is shown in the blue here, and August month, it seems that the highest water demand on the island, that was the peak tourist season. And it significantly goes down towards the fall, keep relatively in the same level through the winter and early spring, and starting to pick up again to the summer. So that is the water demand, average demand within the last 10 years, the calculated numbers. So existing facility now, a few words about the existing facility, how it operates. So there is two plants, plant number 1 and plant number 2. The plant number 1 is older facility, and plant number 2 been commissioned early 2016, early last year. And water is supplied by two wells that have been shown on the previous slide. So two wells supply that water to the plant number 1 and plant number 2. They can be operated in parallel, and they can be operated in a series. So generally, plant number 1 can produce the clean water, and part of the concentrate blended with part of the water supplied directly from the ocean or beach wells, blended and supplied to plant number 2, producing extra certain additional amount of the clean water. So today the wells, the operational well, the typical operation is in about 576,000 gallons per day, which is about 400 gallons per minute. Those wells, they are 30 feet apart located. And operational production of the plant today maximum, it's 230,000 gallons per day. So the brine or concentrate goes through the outfall back to the ocean, where it's mixed with the seawater, and the treated water goes directed to the storage and goes to the water network. There is three Baker tanks utilized or used as the equalization or storage capacity. The total capacity, total capacity 375,000 gallons. However, they cannot be lowered less than 125,000 gallons. It means that really the operational storage is only 250,000 gallons, 250,000 gallons. That is a better picture, larger size of the brine or outfall. They scaled up the plant number 1, the older plant number 2, shown here. That is the plant number 1, one of the reverse osmosis desalination machine that pictured here. That the outfall, that with the water or concentrate, when concentrate comes back to the discharge, and that is the potable water tank that been built near the desalination plant. Future potable water demand for 2035. So here it's in the blue shown the current or average for last 10 years from 2006 to 2016, and here's the future. So as you may see, there is not a significant increase projected within 20 years for that area of Avalon and Hamilton Cove. So all those numbers, they are supported by very detailed calculation and the information that's been vetted by stakeholders and all interested parties that been looking those numbers. So the same picture as you've seen before, that the existing or not existing, the current demand that or supply or balance of the existing facility. So what interesting that actually the capacity of two desalination plants when they running in parallel is limited by the well supply. So generally, or let's say differently, by source water supply. So generally, two source water supply, the capacity of two desalination plant number 1 and plant number 2, when operated in parallel, are limited by the well water supply or source water supply. So, let me one more. So generally, if we want to achieve the treatment capacity 730,000 gallons per day, I just use the direct number from report, not rounded them. We have a deficit in a treatment capacity, and we have a deficit in a supply. So, and that may require additional, assuming the similar capacity, we need about 3 wells to add to maximize that production. And storage deficit. So we would need storage deficit to balance the demand and supply. Because as already mentioned, that treatment facility, it produced a certain amount of the water, but demand is really varies on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, and on an hourly basis. So if we will take a look at the future supply for 2035, so here's the range or extreme that we were looking for. So to produce, we were looking to make produce, here's a number, about 770 gallons per day at the maximum month's average. We can look several scenarios. So here's just extreme number shown. We can make the treatment capacity at 770,000 gallons per day, or we can almost double of that capacity. But what that will affect the size of the storage to balance that. And I'll show you on a following slide how we can handle that, how we can do that. So, and again, we short in a well water supply. Number of well will be dependent on what capacity facility we want to build as a desalination. So generally, what happened, here's the 3 major key components of the water supply. It's intake, desalination, and storage. So that's how we can balance, and that's what we did, actually, to minimize cost of the future upgrade of the facility and the entire water supply. So we can make larger treatment, and that will minimize the storage. But larger treatment will trigger a larger intake and well supply. So in other words, if you will take a look at that schematic, so we can increase that part and reduce storage. Or we can increase storage and have smaller source water supply and smaller treatment. So that really, they were at the balance, and we calculated that to optimize that. Here just shown, that is graph how we balance that mathematically based on the real numbers, and based on the calculations, they are very technical. I just don't want to overwhelm you with those. We ended up with 3 major alternatives. To have production or treated water production, 0.77 million gallon per day, 1 million gallon per day, and 1.44 million gallon per day. Those numbers are not random. Those numbers actually were picked based on the standard modules that already utilized now at the treatment plant. So generally, as you, let me briefly explain you. When you have a facility, it's like your car. In the car, you want all tires to be the same size, right? You don't want to, if you find cheaper tire but different size, probably wouldn't work. So that's the same principle. So we have certain already modules that already built and operated. So we want to make it the same, very similar concept. The reason being because that, first of all, it makes uniform operation. It reduces number of spare parts and pumps, so it makes more uniform to operate. Okay, so based on that production, on the smallest, as already I mentioned, the smaller treatment, the larger storage. So it's given. So all these numbers are supported by very heavy calculations. They are presented in our report. So 0.77 million gallon per day production would require total storage added about 1.8 million gallon. A larger production, 1 million gallon per day production, would require smaller storage additional, 1.4, and 144 million gallon production will require even smaller storage, which is quite reasonable, and that's what expected based on what I just already tried to explain. So generally, that graph, and that chart should have animation. I hope it works. So generally, what it does show how to calculate the storage based on a demand and supply. That dotted line, assuming that this is the production, that is flow or production of the water, and that is the time, a day. And as water demand is not uniform, but production can be uniform, so whichever you find that area below that dotted line up to X line, that volume, that how much water you will produce having that capacity treatment facility. That chart, it's showing the peaking number or maximum demand per that particular day. So generally, if we have, let me show to illustrate that. If we have production capacity on that level, and we have the demand, peaking demand on that day, that level, so generally those are equal parts. All that shaded area, that's how much storage we need. And please watch that graph. I hope it works. As we increase production, the shaded area of storage goes down. So, and that's how we actually calculate and balance that. So we developed that model for that project, and we calculated that way. So alternative number one, the smallest production, about 770,000 gallons per day. So the source, we need at least source enhancement on the addition that we already have. We need about 960,000 gallons per day. So we need to add supply source. We already know today we are short in a water supply to the treatment plant. So as I already mentioned, the current treatment plant has a higher capacity than source water supply can provide. So it's holding it actually already. So storage already enhancement there already mentioned. We need to add storage close to 2 million gallons of the new storage at the minimum. The next level, and that again associated with the standard components replacement at the plant. So that's how we pick those numbers. They are not random. They are very well thought numbers. That for that capacity, or about 1 million gallons per day of the production, we need to enhance or add water supply about 1.44 million gallon per day. It's almost 1,000 gallon per minute. And we need smaller storage size. And the last alternative is to build up the facility, alternative number 3, about 1.4 million gallon per day. We need, as you can see, the storage enhancement, it drastically goes up, and the drill the wells, it's a very costly on the island. But however, that requires a relatively small enhancement of the storage. So that is really the trade. So here's the conclusion recommendations. Here's a summary of 3 alternatives that I already mentioned. So 770,000 gallon per day capacity, 1 million and 1.4 million gallon per day capacity. And that's where we ended up with the cost. And actually, alternative number 1 is recommended. Not just because it's a lower cost, and I'll walk you through. There's other reasons for that. And that's what we recommended in our feasibility study to pursue. Why it's preferred alternative? Again, it's the lowest cost alternative, but this is not only the reason. Because the plant can be built as a phased approach. So generally, when you implement the alternative number 1, as more demand is coming to the island or something unpredictable coming in, you always can upgrade it to the next phase of the alternative number 2 and 3. It's really, you start from smaller and you build up on that. So phased approach, here just schematically shown, so you can go on the phased approach. And even alternative number 1 can have own phases, and that we added to the implementation plan on the alternative number 1. We can break it down to phases, to 3 phases as well. The first phase is adding some storage capacity, which is sufficient, almost close to the alternative number 3, if you remember the numbers. And that is 0.5 million gallon. So that, and what's interesting, what's really good in the water systems, that it's hard to evaluate what happened when you introduce and change. You need to look how system respond. And that is important. That's why phased approach, it's recommended, preferred, because you can get and learn from that system response how that improvement actually, what that gave us, and you can update or optimize your next level of the plant expansion or system expansion. As a second phase, we can add 3 wells. As you remember on certain graph, we need slides, we needed at least 3 wells to utilize maximum capacity of the existing facility and build another and produce more desalinated water. And phase 3, we can add another or additional 1.3 million gallon of storage. Again, those are numbers, but those numbers can be refined as you start to upgrade your system. You will see more in the details. When you get system response, those numbers will be refined. But that will allow you really smart way to spend the money, because you don't want to overspend and you don't want to complete the project and find out that you're short in the water again. So it's really careful development of the project. And this project, it's not just the treatment, even we call it treatment, but this is the entire water supply, which includes treatment, includes feed water supply, and all is based on the demand. So demand actually drives and lead all criterion and numbers whichever are needed. And with that, alternative number 3, I did mention that. We can add additional storage and replace one of the aero machine on the old facility. I did mention at the beginning, the existing plant number 1, the older facility, which is today, I believe, 27 years old, right? something like that. Yeah. So it has 3 desalination machines. Those are prefabricated, the skid-mounted machines that were just brought, dropped, and connected. And they now rated at the production capacity 35 gallon per minute to about 50,000 gallon per day of the capacity. So what can be done, all those phases those numbers that I presented, phase 1, 2, 3, actually we can, or whoever developed the project, can replace one machine by the new machine capacity like plant number 2. In that case, you have the same modularity, and that can be rolled. So practically, when replace one old machine out of 4 by new machine sized as a plant number 2, you're practically freeing up all those 3 small machine, older machines. So you're already updating the capacity. And that can be just going the same way and replaced further if the demand in the water comes. Okay, thank you. That
was it. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm sure we.
I have a question on that. I'm not sure I really understood that last section of replacing the 1 RO. So you're saying the way that plant number 1 runs now, as it's got basically 4 smaller units that produce about 50,000 gallons of water per day per unit. Mm-hmm. And you're saying in phase 3, replace 1 RO, the other 3 would still run independently. But if you're going to bring in another plant, wouldn't you just add that in addition to? Why replace?
No. What happened? You have one. Let's go that way. In a gallon per minute, maybe that will be easy. Okay, that okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a slide. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I like slides.
Let me show you something. Those are tanks that is just supporting slide. Mm-hmm. The Baker tanks existing. Okay, I have a slide. Okay, here's the existing machines, okay? Can you see that screen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's generally what you're doing.
So what did
you can do
say?
next one if you need to.
Oh.
You can go next one and you can go next one.
Oh, and that's how you get that.
But that's what I'm saying. So instead of replacing it, we could just add plant number 3. Similar to plant number 2.
Here's a just comment, okay? Those machines, they're already 27 years old. Yeah. And we're talking about 20 years more to add to our operation. And we want to stay within the same building because adding another machine would require to expansion the building and side it's quite tight. Mm-hmm. Generally, you're right. It can be just added, but that I think it would just it will be probably just simply just replaced.
Okay, that makes sense.
As a safety room.
Do you think those 4 RO units they're worth keeping then? I mean, they're worth something. Do they run efficiently and effectively enough for our community? In contrast to what technology provides to date?
Okay, let's say that way. Those machines still running. They don't have energy recovery device.
I'm sorry, they don't.
Energy recovery device, which practically became standard today in the industry, and particularly isobaric devices, which save in more than 40% of the energy. So just that piece makes the difference, right?
Right.
Plus, the machines, the 27 years old, I would say, again, who knows how long they will be running, and they require maintenance. They are very quite manually operated. It's more operational expenses to the Edison. And so new machine, they're automatic. They have energy recoveries. They are very more sophisticated, and they will run their lifespan. And the RO desalination plants, longest I ever seen in my career. It's 20 years old calculation span, and this is actually Carlsbad, just across the ocean.
So
The
wouldn't it be
Carlsbad
wise just to start phasing these out and
Well, in my
Understand.
opinion, I would suggest, I would consider that. I don't want to make complete recommendation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's all related to project financing and all that. They're running. They are not probably as economical and as good as the new machines, and they need more maintenance. And who knows how long they will last.
And they're not the same recovery rate.
Yeah, and economically that makes sense, and also from the standpoint of, the energy and running them and all of that. But I mean, as we've learned, those the 1 through 4 are pumps, hoses, filters, and motors, and as long as you keep them in good condition, they're going to keep running as long as
Not
as
just
they
that,
can.
the pressure vessels, those are high pressure. I seen how they stop breaking, and then that pressure, it can probably, slice the human being in half. So it's a safety issue too. So, and those pressure vessels, again, I didn't expect them, but I would,
This is just a piece of conflicting information that some of us have received from Edison. So that's why I'm making the point of getting it in this conversation, is that, the point that was delivered was that, these could run for as long as we kept them in good condition. So I just want Edison to be aware that this is information we've received. And so that's where I'm questioning, why not add to instead of replace? So.
I don't know, I would just replace it.
yeah, I would think if you get enough good mechanics, you can make anything run forever. I mean, let me ask you, why 20 years? And I think you covered this in one of your first statements. Why 20 years and not 40 years?
Not what? Not 40 years?
Why do we have a 20-year plan and not a 40-year plan?
Maintenance, because the maintenance, that significantly increased the maintenance cost for them. When we projected the plan, most of the desalination plants, they developed as a design build.
And so
Sorry. Oh, yeah.
So as time goes on, we can add to these plants, to these storage. Is that correct?
Oh no, storage is it's a balance between supply and demand.
I mean, but we can add or subtract on storage. I mean, we could always purchase a smaller storage unit, or we could utilize a larger storage unit for smaller capacity. I mean, let's say we grow and we start producing more water in 20 years. We want to add on to this plant because it's not sufficient. We can do that.
You can do both. Where you can do a storage and the machines. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The just point being that keep the same module size.
So in terms of the phasing and when that's an Edison policy decision. You're just saying, I mean, it's not that it's going to take 20 years to do the 3 phases.
Oh, no.
How
I
many?
didn't say
30
that.
months.
30 months. If we did
it's
everything.
it's a mid-demand. It's how they calculated the
Oh, right.
capacity.
So-
Because you don't want to build plant today to the current capacity. You want to build it to meet
Yeah.
future demand, right?
Yeah.
That the milestone that calculated.
Are there any questions of Dr. Frankel from the audience? Mm-hmm. Sure. You should.
Pam Alberts, 217 Calle del Sol. Did you include or factor in any change in algae bloom affecting production ability over time?
Well, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that question yet prior to that. Yeah, so algae bloom, first, the answer is no. And there is a reason why, because the algae bloom is not as affect the well water supply and the record what we learned, we haven't seen the data that affecting the well water. Algae for open ocean intake, yes, it's a It's a big issue, correct? But it's a temporary event when algae blooming, and that's what's called the red tide event. But it's not being reported here, and particularly, at least I haven't seen that. Is that reported? Yeah, that does it. In that case, yeah. How long?
50 hours to up to 150 hours. And of course, algae bloom is impacted by climate change.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so I probably, I know I missed it. Sorry.
It only make your comment.
Well, I mean, isn't the impact of the algae bloom minimized because we're taking well water and we're using all the
No,
sand?
what happened? What happened? The algae bloom usually it's affecting the operation of the plant. Particularly in the ocean or in the open ocean intake,
Right.
but well water, because the water filters through the floor, it's not as significant as for the others. And again, you're concerned about the operation or water quality?
Well, production.
On the production,
And the
yeah.
amount of storage required to get through the algae bloom period.
Yeah, I haven't seen that any data on report on the operation, because mainly it's a reduced operation of the plant, but it's more concerned for the open ocean intakes, because the colloidal matter that algae produce that would fall in, but as it filters, most of it's almost dissolved, and that is, at least I haven't seen the data on that affects the production capacity.
Can I just wrap that around again and see if I understand it? So with this project, this three-phasing, are you saying that the algae bloom wouldn't affect us because the way when we build the new wells, the way in which we're pulling the water is from well versus from just the open ocean? So it minimizes our risk?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. There is a certain feature we're designing for algae bloom for open ocean intakes. We are not designing for the well water.
Okay.
Was there anything else assessed during your study, such as the conditions of the pipes, well water,
No, that
top
was
water
beyond,
storage,
No, that was
aquifers? None of that. You didn't
beyond,
cover any of
was
that.
beyond our scope.
Okay.
I just want to confirm that Dr. Frankel's scope of work is specifically on the desalination plant, and so that's what his report speaks to.
If I could, Mayor, there was a statement that was in the report, and I thought it was. I actually quoted it in an update that I do weekly, and it talks about the importance of desal environmentally. And if I can, Mayor, it just says desalination of seawater is the drought-proof option that provides a reliable and resilient water supply to the island, regardless of any fluctuations in climate, drought conditions, or unexpected weather events. Exploration of the expansion of desal treatment for use on the island will also preserve the natural groundwater.
Correct.
And will not impact and potentially improve the island environment. I thought that was a very significant statement about.
Yeah, because you're not touching your groundwater. Right?
Well, that's true in Avalon, but it's not true for the rest of the island, because the rest of the island, the groundwater is being exploited. So
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but I was saying as an option. It's just it's interesting.
it's good for us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Tony Petrovich had one.
Oh, yes.
Tony Bedrovich, 56 Azul. I thought Councilman Sampson in an earlier meeting had asked for the expansion or growth plans that went into sort of the model. And from the public standpoint, I didn't see where that was. So as you expanded usage, what was that based on? That was my main.
Oh, you mean the increased
Demand.
Yes.
Oh, there's the.
Oh, up to the microphone, please. Yeah.
There's they are very meeting with the stakeholders, and information has been collected. So we just have that summary in the report. Yeah, It's from stakeholders. Yeah.
And
I don't know.
and that's a specific question
I
to
don't know,
Edison
but
that
it's been done,
that we
yeah.
have is who was spoken to determine what the demand would be 20 years down the road.
Right. So this question came up last month, and basically the way it works with the stakeholders is that we basically took a general poll of general numbers for future development, all based on the City of Avalon's general plan. And the numbers were consistent with the plan. So it's really the numbers based off the general plan published on the website was the basis for our study. And we were just confirming that those are kind of general numbers. Actually, the plan's numbers are higher than our numbers turned out to be. So that should really answer that question. And also the algae bloom question, just to clarify, Val's scope was not to really look at the specifics of the existing saltwater wells or the infrastructure, the desalination infrastructure. He was looking at what our supply is, what our production is, what our storage is now and for in the future, and calculating how to meet those demands. So we didn't do infrastructure studies on pipes and sizes and as far as condition. That was not part of the scope of his study.
You just said our, meaning Edison's? Or Avalon's? I mean, because Avalon is a different situation than the rest of the island.
We're talking about desalination, which is only in Avalon.
Okay, just in Avalon. Because we had a water shortage throughout the whole island.
Right, but this whole feasibility study is on desalination. Let's all remember that this is a part of the grant requirement for desalination, for which the draft guidelines have just recently been published. So in getting ready to apply for the grant, one of the requirements was to do this feasibility study. So we have to remember that the overarching reason for this feasibility study, it satisfies a lot of requirements and questions that we have with the system to improve it. But it also, the main focus of it was to be able to be ready to apply for this grant, which is a $10 million grant. So that's what we're doing.
If I could just, on the grant, the last round of grants, the total sum was $8.3 or $9.3 million, and it was capped at $3 million for each grant. The guidelines just released. It's like 85 to 95 million in grant money. And so because of that, they've dramatically increased the funds available for this. So
it's $93 million, and each grant the max is $10 million. So Catalina and Avalon, we stand to be able to win a $10 million grant if we're able to do it right and work together and get a good application. And we have a high chance of a great project and being able to implement a lot of what the feasibility study has determined that we need to do. So let's just that's probably that's what we want to couch all this in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Would there be a possibility of adding or offsetting the fuel energy cost with solar energy into the future if we wanted to grow in that direction?
As part of the grant, there is a GHG emissions calculation that we have to do. The grant is asking that we have energy recovery and energy reduction, so that will be a part of the application. Exactly how we fulfill that requirement, whether it's solar or by other means, that will come in the engineering study. That will be the next step in putting together a set of plans for the saltwater wells, for increased RO or replacement of RO, and for the storage.
The community appreciates that aspect.
Thank you.
Mayor?
You bet. We're on the same page there.
Thank you, Ken.
What I think this report, assuming that it's that it's acceptable to the city, it's the guide that you have been asking about and for. It is a guide over 20 years describing what demand will be and what steps would be taken by Edison to meet that demand, and how incrementally it seems it could be provided. And then, as was just mentioned, that it gives you a framework on which to evaluate grant applications that may be coming from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation or the state Proposition 1 funds, or maybe other federal and state funds. You can say, oh, yeah, it's part of the plan for the future. So from that, to the extent it's acceptable to you, it really gives us a good guide to measure where we are going or where we could go with water supply and sustainability for Avalon.
Seeing no further questions, Dr. Frankel, I thank you on behalf of the city and of the residents of Avalon. I want to thank you very much for your presentation. And we will have this online. Are we going to do that for anybody who's...
Yes, we will put their summary. Yes, yes, ma'am.
And Adeline and Kim, also thank you very much for coming.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frankel.
Thank you.
And what we're going to do is we're going to
Yes.
continue this item for discussion and direction after we've got some other items here that people are waiting
Right,
for.
later on in the evening. Yes. Thank you. Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Be safe. Okay. Okay, now we will go to announcements. Do we have any announcements, Ms. Ratty or City Manager?
I have a brief report when you're ready for that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we'll do it under City Manager report.
Okay.
Are there any written communications? I did receive something today I'd like to pass out. If we could make copies for the council and perhaps Bob. It's Leak IQ. It's a low flow water management system designed for use in homes and small businesses. Basically, so if you have water running, it will shut it off. And anyway, it's a new technology, and I said that I would share it with everyone.
Oh, great.
So, okay. Okay, no written communications? Okay, City Manager report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Briefly, there's a few items. One is that city staff, myself, and others will be attending on May 8th, Monday, May 8th, from 1 to 4 in Carson, California, the Department of Water Resources public workshop on Proposition 1 funds. Number two is you did receive one response to the RFP for the Fuel Dock restaurant, which will be evaluated. Number three is that there has been a request that I've made to our contact at the California Coastal Commission to, and they had earlier agreed to discuss the Cabrillo Mole Intermodal and Gateway Project, the local coastal plan update, expediting permitting for SCE's desal upgrades in relationship to the local coastal plan, and then Pebbly Beach Road and cliff improvements. Item 4, there is copies of the draft regulations for desal. It's a quick read, but we will have it available to those online. We are working with the grants manager and Michael Baker to obtain the DAC disadvantaged community designations. And the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation will be, they've asked to meet with us to discuss issues relating to water in a week or two. That concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Question? How long do you think it's going to take for the DAC program to be implemented?
We will have, we are talking to U.S. Bureau and to Prop 1 to Mr. Mills at this time. So by the time the applications are submitted and reviewed, we would expect that will be part of that process when that application is submitted. So we're on target, I think, based on what Audra is telling me. Michael Baker is assisting us to the extent that additional data is needed. We do have all the backup data on the survey that you did last year to determine that we are a disadvantaged community. And as you say, or you suggest, that is very important in terms of eligibility for a higher grant amount.
City Attorney report. I'd like to tell you welcome back from your vacation.
Thank you.
I'm glad you finally got one.
The one item that I have is by the end of this week, we'll be sending a draft agreement to Edison for the county's $500,000, and we can discuss that in more detail when we're talking about the action follow-up on the Frankel report.
Great. Council
And
member,
I enjoyed my vacation very much.
Good,
Thank you.
good. You're welcome.
You look rested.
Yeah, council member reports. Who's first?
I just have a quick one. I participated at the Spring Fest and just want to say to Recreation and Community Services that was a home run. It was a wonderful event, minus the trash. But I know we're talking about that offline. But Carlos, David, Dan, you guys did a fabulous job for Spring Fest. Well done. And that's all I have.
Nothing? Councilman Sampson?
Yes, I'd like to ask. I think we've talked about this before. Councilperson Cassidy has brought it up, but I think we've all had shown interest in bringing an internship program from school kids into the city office to teach them administrative duties, since every city in the United States, and probably in the world for that matter, has some kind of governmental oversight, and it's such a disconnection for kids. I would have never thought, and I probably wouldn't have been interested in this, but if we make an appealing offer to a couple of kids for an internship program to come into the city hall, maybe 2 hours a day for, let's say, 3 days a week, and throughout maybe the year, they could help rec department during off season, pay a minimum wage, or just give them some kind of college credits for coming into the city and teaching them administrative duties. And then also how city government works and how government works in general, because I know there's a lot of job opportunities there. It's probably not going to be a lot of kids that are interested, but maybe there will be. Maybe the two or one that we get to participate in this program, it might have some resounding effects. I know one thing. Ralph Morrow last year, he tried to get some kids to write a report on freedom, what it took to get to this point as a country, from a veteran standpoint, from a patriot standpoint, and he had a real hard time recruiting kids. And maybe we can encourage the principal or the people in school to challenge the kids to come up with some kind of a perspective on the United States and how our government was formed, and just how patriotism works, and how uniting as a country has developed over the 240 years that we've been a country. So anyway, I just wanted to ask if maybe the rest of the council would maybe ask the city manager to reach out to the principal and see if we could find it in our hearts, in our pocketbooks, to fund a program. And I'm figuring it would only cost, if you pay a minimum wage, let's say $15 an hour or $12 an hour, a couple kids, a couple days a week, maybe $5,000 a year. And that's for a couple of kids to learn what we're doing. Maybe it could actually help Denise a little bit and some of our staff. Anyway,
if I could, Councilman, because you raise may I?
Please.
Actually, there has been some conversation that I've had with the Conservancy person who is they call it mirroring or shadowing, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And I was in the conversation. I've also contacted the school principal and said, is there a way to broaden that experience into something that would not maybe as extensive as what you were saying, though that's something to think about, but because you'll learn at some point that where the real action is in local government, it's where you can get the most done, and you have your elected leaders are not across the way or in D.C., they're here. And how it works also creates job opportunities. Some of us, you may change your mind when you found that I am a product of an internship, so that's a very good idea that should be carefully coordinated with school and with other parties who are interested.
That's great if we could partner with some of the other agencies on the island or corporations, especially Conservancy, which is a total learning. It's learning at its best. They got docents, interns, they got people coming in, volunteers. But it would make it appealing for a kid to have a little part-time job, a couple hours after school, shoot down 2 days a week and shuffle some paperwork or put some packets together. I kind of mirrored the fact that it's hard to recruit. It's hard to sell that to a kid because it's government. It seems kind of boring. Maybe we could liven it up by adding something with the Conservancy or, maybe the Island Company or one of these other companies here in town could help us out and help us sell this so that we could make learning funner for the kids. And then I went off on the on this thing that Ralph did, because the VFW is constantly looking for the youth to get involved with patriotism and with what it took to build the country and just the appreciation of what freedom is, because you never know when war is going to come knocking on our door, which it's already here. But, it hits home when you have to go there and fight, or somebody, and most of us do know people who've gone and done that. So we probably have to reach out to the school and make it an appealing thing, but whatever. I'm asking for the council's direction, and I know that they're behind me on this one because it's a no-brainer. So anyway, I just thought I'd light that fire a little bit more.
Well, and then along that line, I spoke to the principal recently about not patriotism, but the building, the trades, and how our young people really, they don't have an opportunity anymore to get involved with plumbing, electrical, HVAC, any of that. And when I had this discussion with him, since most of that equipment has been taken out of the facility, and we also talked about it when the principal John Meyer came and Long Beach City College,
right?
And he was saying if we could find people that were wanting, so it's different but the same. Find people that were interested in getting their. And Bob would know. It's an industry and something license, and they could actually teach and give credits to the kids and teach them the trades, which would be good too. Because
that would be good.
It's like an apprenticeship.
You know what we should specialize in, and we're actually a lot of us are experts in, is customer service. So that kind of goes hand in hand with city government, with your relation to other people. But we just happen to be a vacation destination, one of the finest on the west coast of the United States, and we should be teaching our kids how to be customer service experts, how to deal with people, issues, conflicts, how to keep from getting to the point to where there's conflict and issue, which is good customer service, Yeah. And we should be selling that to our children too, and sending them out into the world and being the best that they can be at that. So anyway, that's just an educational thing that I just wanted to come up with, because it's something I struggled with when I was a youth, and I would be glad to share any knowledge that we have from this dais with the youth that would be good for the future of our community and for the world, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
and
all
we
I
even
have.
we already have stuff on customer service because we've gotten the training ourselves.
But I just, in conjunction with what you're saying, Joe, I think it would be a good idea if we brought back something on a future agenda to develop the internship program, because we have talked about it for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess let's put something on the agenda for an upcoming meeting that we develop an internship program, hopefully before summertime. And also Annie and I are connected with a gentleman by the name of Dan Knapp, and the Conservancy is as well. And he is the executive director of the Conservation Corps of Long Beach. And they have reached out to us a couple different times. And I've met Dan several times at Gateway Cities, where he's saying, we want to partner with you. We have kids who are interested, and we can work with him to develop a program that works for our local youths as well. So there's a lot of option to gather that information to help us develop a program.
Right. And they did a recruitment here for the gentleman from. Did they get anybody to sign up? Dan, are you? What's that?
We did not get someone in the end. We tried for 2.5 months, and full employment is wonderful, though. That's not
Yeah. I mean, the opportunity to do that would have been incredible. I'm kind of disappointed that nobody came, but doesn't mean we'll give up, right?
Yeah.
No, but we do have
Keep
some
trying.
resources we could go after. So
Yeah.
I am in full support of that, Joe, and I think we should have that on a future.
Let's
agenda.
keep trying.
Yeah.
Because if we keep trying, Tony's trying, we can put something together and get the kids going in the right direction, because they're going to find once they get out there in the open road, it's a rough world out there, and it's good to have alliances and all the education you can possibly get when you're out there. So we can get them hit the ground running. Anyway, that's all I got. So
Go ahead, Jim Sampson. I just want to compliment Jordan on the communication about the capital projects that's going out, the schedules and lists of what's happening and who's going to be affected. I think it's really good that our citizens knows when their salt water is going to be turned off. But and it's also a really big project, and I think he's doing a good job at that. All I got.
Okay, on the 5th of April, I went to the Mayor's Summit in the City of Industry and attended some workshops, and I will be sharing it with staff. I apologize, I haven't gotten back to you, but one of the smart cities talking about transportation and autonomous vehicles, and that's just moving forward. And stormwater and wastewater management, and also the arts. And the arts were very interesting because there's arts money available, for local program. One of the things that the lady told me, and I have her name, that if I don't know if we're ever going to do that, the project, the Five Corners, and you can, and when you do that, you can, and the grant the project you have to do has to be more than $500,000. So because I was asking about the library, well, that didn't cost that much, but we could put a statue of anybody. I mean, we could have an art project in the middle of that. I mean, so there's good money. I've got, and Dan, you probably know a lot of those folks from Calabasas being in that, but that was real promising. And they talked about, which I know I've talked to Jim and I've spoken to Dan about the needs for some kind of an arts commission, so we can increase the visibility of the arts, to encourage the arts, and utilize our own local artists, whether it be theatrical, music, visual arts, whatever. So I'm hoping that will move forward. That's what I would like, kind of consensus on at some point too. But anyway, and so we got some correspondence from Island Enterprises on the status of their float, and I am hoping that we are working diligently to resolve that issue and to get that going. It seems like there hasn't been I haven't seen a lot of progress based on the report that we got from Mr. Stickler from Island Enterprises, and I just want to know.
Brian Bray has provided a response to Mr. Stickler on the questions that he raised, and I assume, which is always dangerous, but that there will be a meeting based upon that communication that Mr. Bray has responded.
Okay.
Has discussed some of the issues with the city attorney's office. So I believe that would be something that will occur shortly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Is that fair, Brian?
Yeah. And if you wanted to add something, Brian, okay. Thank you. It just I don't like to see that just sitting there. And okay, that's it for now. We have a lot of other stuff. Okay. Let's go to oral communications. It's an opportunity for people from the community to speak on an issue that's not on the agenda. You will be limited to approximately 3 minutes, and no action will be taken.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Pam Albers, 217 Calle del Sol. I have 3 items. One is a matter that's actually been pending in the city or have been discussed for over 3 years, and I know that it was assigned, according to the city manager, it was assigned to Dan Hunke because he doesn't have enough to do. But I just wanted to bring your attention that there is a group of people interested in progressive progress in our city as well as nationally in our environmental group. There are about 50 people that belong to this, meeting regularly. And the environmental subcommittee that we set up is very, very interested in and concerned about environmental progress in Avalon. And obviously the polystyrene ordinance that was brought up again 2 or 3 years ago and nothing's happened. There are 99 cities that already have ordinances. I'd hate to see us in another situation where we go, oh, there's going to be a state law. We don't really need to do anything, because we do, because every day it makes a difference. So we had discussed and really felt that we should, that the city should look to the city of Manhattan Beach. They have a very effective program that takes into account not just the containers, but cups, straws, cutlery, and so forth. They have a list of vendors where you can get this stuff from. They implemented it. They gave their restaurants 6 months' notice so that they had plenty of time to get it together. So I made a copy of that information. Just wanted to know that, and especially young people excited and interested in policy decisions, we want to keep them interested and not fall into the trap of, oh, nothing happens. Right. The other thing is also something that was brought up before, which is the idea of ICE and the raids that are happening and deportations. The first dreamer, who had no criminal record whatsoever, was deported today, a young man who was 19. And I would like to think that we can at least send a message that we're not going to participate in that. That's really what we're hoping to see.
We had given direction to the city attorney to do something, and then he went on vacation.
Right, yeah. And so we're working, our office drafted the policy for Santa Ana, which was recognized by the New York Times as the most comprehensive. And so we'll be bringing something similar to that to Avalon.
What is this now?
This is
what are you working on?
This is a statement that the city council will make regarding immigration and the rights of immigrants.
Is it within the Constitution of the United States of America? I mean, which is what the pledge we took when we stood in this office. I mean, we gotta abide by what we made a pledge to do, which is abide by the Constitution.
But Joe, the Constitution just says that the federal government cannot dictate what local police will do. So you start with that idea.
I just know that I swore on the Bible.
Right. No. We're not proposing to do anything illegal.
And I come from an immigrant family.
We're not proposing to do anything illegal. We just want to recognize all the people that contribute to our community and the impact that some of these things may have.
So you're
on
saying
them.
somebody from here was deported from?
No, from here.
No, from the mainland.
No. Okay. And you had one more thing?
I do. And this is not for comment. It's just that I'm hoping that someone will be interested in this and feel that we need to have it on an agenda at a future time. There is a matter on the Planning Commission agenda of an approval of the first, so I was going to say standing room only because that's my sarcasm, single room occupancy units. And part of what I discovered is that at some point in 2010, the city's ordinance that says that the developer of new commercial units or hotels or businesses has to provide housing for 50% of their peak season employees. For some reason, there's a phrase in there that wasn't in there before that says rental space without any definition of what that is supposed to be. And I brought this up before, that ordinance has been in effect for a long time. Apparently it got tweaked, but not necessarily to make it easier for staff to figure out what to do. And you have a large employer with the new businesses trying to figure out how to implement it. You've got staff trying to figure out how to implement it. You're going to have planning commission that's going to try to figure out how to implement it. And I don't think we have all the tools and all the information to help any of those people figure out what to do. So I'm hoping that could come back here for some big policy discussions about what do we mean by summer help and rental space and all of those things.
And as the council has previously given direction, we are totally revising the city's inclusory housing ordinance, and that will be addressed. Ms. Hall, who was here 2 weeks ago, has been tasked with that. Okay. So your whole entire ordinance will be
okay. But in the meantime, there's something on the agenda. So I mean, I have to say, I'm going to say to the Planning Commission on that basis, with that information, they should hold off. Because if it's going to be changed, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Let me, Mayor.
Thank you.
That's on tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
Well, yes.
If I could, in the end, as the council knows, in the end, any policy, whether by ordinance or not, has to be consistent with the housing element of the city's general plan. And there are policies that are outlined in the general plan, one of which has to do, there are several, some may appear to be conflicting, but one that in diminishing the supply of single-family units for working families, there has to be great care taken in reducing the number of single-family units because we have, as you know, a housing shortage for working people. We also know, as Ms. Albers had stated, that we have an issue with for summer work housing, but we have to look at the balance to make sure that we are not diminishing the supply without a replacement of single-family rental homes. And so this is a real careful balance for us that may require, as the city attorney said, it may require additional legislation. But I know that state law and I know that the general plan speaks to that balance. You have to maintain that balance. You don't diminish one in the favor of other, but you have to do them together. So that's why the issue is contentious, if you will, at the Planning Commission because of that balance.
So with this new information that's come up, is it possible to get that pulled tomorrow night? We don't know.
No, no.
No what?
No, it's not possible because it's been noticed, and this matter may come up to the city council for appeal. So we cannot have the city council giving direction on that. Right. But again, as will be discussed with the Planning Commission, state law requires that the city designate a zone in the city for SROs, regardless of whether it has to be affordable or not. State law says you have to allow one zone, at least one zone, for these single residential occupancy units. And so that is what is before the Planning Commission tonight, is the state law directive that we have that and we have standards for it, and that's what's being determined. Okay.
Okay. Any other oral communication? Oh. What's that? Yeah, they do.
Good evening, Jim Luchahan. I'm wearing two hats tonight, one my official chamber hat and also as a representative of the Avalon Rotary Club. You may be aware that Avalon Rotary Club is about to hold its second annual chili cook-off that will be held on May 6th down on South Beach. And I'm here tonight to remind the council and members of the community that we desperately, or not desperately, we anxiously want many more to submit their recipes for either chili or salsa, because you compete to win up to $3,000 in prizes. And we're in the entry phase now, and it's coming together beautifully. It's going to be a spectacular event, and we'd like to encourage more participation among our local community. And also to let you know that this Saturday evening at 7 p.m. on Wrigley Stage, we'll be hosting the next in our Catalina concert series. This will be an almost acoustic. There's mild amplification for two bands. One is called This Wild Life, and the other one is called Everett Coast. And they're very sort of Simon and Garfunkel, Seals and Crofts kind of music. So it should be a nice, enjoyable evening for all, and we hope you'll come join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, did you want to mention the volunteer recognition program on the
26th or 25th?
Something.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Along with that, on the 6th, Chili Cook-Off is a busy weekend, and then we've got the Downhill Classic that weekend, as well as the rugby tournament up at Joe Machado Field. So it will be a busy weekend. We're also working with Levent, Cat Bev, and possibly trying to bring some other elements to that particular weekend. So that will be forthcoming. Couple other just real quick updates. Thank you for the nice accolades on the Spring Fest. That was enjoyable. We had on Sunday, Easter had 360, starting from, there was probably a 3-week-old out there, all the way up to 12-year-olds hunting eggs up at Descanso. So thank you for Descanso and the team up there for letting us be up there. But 360 kids and families up there. We had a great time with the Easter Bunny. The 29th will be a recognition. It's a volunteer. This is my first time going through it, so it's a lifetime achievement. Folks have been working with children in the Avalon community, and we'll be recognizing 3 people. It'll be on a Saturday, again, the 29th at 11 o'clock. We'll get more information out on that, but we'd love to have you out for that. 2 others real quick. I've got a couple spots left open. We've got a group of 21 going up to Airport in the Sky, the seniors, tomorrow. We're meeting at the tour terminal at 9:45, taking off at 10, and we'll be back about 2. And then tomorrow we're also sending 15 teens from the Teen Center for a overnight at Campus by the Sea for a 30-hour famine. So they're going to fast for, ideally they're going to fast for 30 hours. We're taking some water. We're taking some light snacks in case somebody crash and burns out there. But it's for World Hunger. It's a fundraiser. They raised $1,175 through Springfest and selling enchiladas and a couple other things. Some of the money is going to World Hunger, and then others to pay for the way up at
What if
Campus
somebody
by
wants to
the Sea.
donate to that? How do they donate?
We're accepting it. The City of Avalon's accepting them.
Okay.
So they can, contact me
Dan,
here at
okay.
the City of Avalon for that. So
Okay, great.
the total ticket was about $1,700. We want a chunk of money to go to the World Hunger Organization as well. So they did a fantastic job and getting really close to meeting that whole goal. So really proud of those guys.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Any other communications?
Andy, can I say one thing? I just wanted to bring
yes.
up. I know we had that incident with the dog that we had down there.
Yes.
And again, I think a couple of weeks ago we mentioned that about pet bulls. I don't even know what kind of dogs were involved personally. I know it's a
Pit
hot
bulls.
item now. Somebody got hurt.
Yes.
Somebody got medevaced. That kind of thing. This is kind of serious. Could have been a little kid walking a dog. I mean, it could have been anybody. But I don't know if the city, what's the responsibility of the city has to have an area to quarantine a pet. I know we don't have any facilities right now, correct? Is there an obligation or from the city to have that, or
Yes,
we
there
just,
is. And we,
how does that work?
There is a law that if you operate an animal control function, that there are certain conditions you have to comply with. And your question is a very pertinent one, which we're going to have to take a very hard look at. And the law itself, this was something actually that was brought to our attention a few months ago about what are the requirements when you're running an animal facility. And we'll get information back to you. The incidents you describe deal with vicious animals, in my view. They're vicious when they bite people. They're vicious when they attack other animals. And the city attorney, I know we've had a brief conversation. We have to look at what are the most proactive steps that we can take to prevent that, which might include well, let's just leave that. I know other cities, we did a list check. There's other cities that have some, they have actions that they've taken. We'll take a look at that. And then I know the city attorney and I will work with staff and bring back something that to the extent that that's needed in our code.
But for this incident, there are our own municipal code. There is state law under the health code. Things that we can do immediately with respect to the 2 dogs involved and the owner of the dogs. And so we will be looking at that and taking direction from the city manager into what prosecutorial actions will be taken and what actions to be taken with respect to the particular dogs involved.
and there has been discussion with the Island Company about an impound yard out where the cats are currently. So yes, that's kind of
Little too
in
late.
discussion. I know.
We have no area right now.
Hi.
Hi.
Where those animals are, correct?
Yeah.
I was actually just going to call the city manager and meet with him tomorrow, but since you brought it up, the incident that occurred today were friends of mine, and he's in surgery right now, and the little dog's gonna make it, and I'm here taking responsibility for the dog because the family had to go over to the mainland. There are boaters that come over every year. The son fishes with my son every day on a daily basis in the summer. And animals are animals. I have plenty of animals, but it was a tragic incident today, and thank God it wasn't a child. And my concern is I was on the Humane Society for many years, and the city doesn't have a shelter. And when those vicious dogs were being taken off of the pier, and the harbor department did a fantastic job, you know, being first responders there. And I just happened to be on the pier going to the chamber at that time. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, these were my friends. The little boy was there. His dad was, you know, on a gurney with paramedics. So when they took those dogs off, there's no cages to put them in the vehicle, you know, to be safe, you know, safety for the dog, safety for, you know, the code enforcement. We don't have a shelter to put these dogs at, to be in quarantine. There are state laws. The city really, at the end of the day, is responsible to have the shelter. It's in your code. It's in the municipal code. It's in the state law, state code, and we don't have one. And the Humane Society has stepped up so much to work with the city to help you. When dogs are abandoned, I've taken 3 in my house to foster. We call around to all the dog animal lovers, please, can you take this dog temporarily till we find a home, and so forth. Dr. Denny does a fabulous job, but he's not a shelter, and he is taking care of animals there. We can't put a dog that's under quarantine at Dr. Denny's facility because that's the whole point. They have to be separated. And there's a little shelter, a little cage that is substandard because the dog can get out at Dr. Denny's outside, and nobody can watch it 24 hours, and it's in there right now. And people go down there and mess with them, and it could get out. It's not locked. It's not secure. And I know that land is a huge problem here, but we have a lot of problem with vicious dogs. This is the second incident in 2 months, and I just think that we all need to work together to figure this out, because that was a really bad one today.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I know this seems like not a high priority on the city's list, but at the end of the day, you guys are.
Well, it is a priority. Believe me. Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm glad I hear this, but I've been part of the Humane Society for many years and on the board, and I should take this back. This is a new body, so and new manager. So I hope that we can work together to try and take care of this.
So can I ask a question? Sure. Is this okay? And we got the sheriff here too, which is good. Is this a law enforcement issue? Is this a responsible dog owner issue? Is this a humane society issue? Is this an issue where I know in some cities, if you come onto a situation like this and dogs are ripping people apart, there's only one alternative.
Yes.
And that is the person who's got the gun takes action. Yeah. I know we can't do that down on Front Street. That would be terrible. But if some human is getting mauled or some kid is getting torn apart, there's one option at that point right there. And I'm sure, our law enforcement is well capable of doing that. But maybe like these dogs or any dog, maybe we should have dogs on them that have muzzles down on Front Street. I mean,
we shouldn't have dogs on Front Street. That's our city ordinance.
There we go.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing too? I think we need to put in the ordinance that all animals need to be altered. There is no reason why any pit bulls, any animals, any dogs should be walking around that is not fixed.
Well, in fact, some cities, there's about 15 of them in a quick check that require of certain types that they be neutered or spayed. I guess I always mix those two up, but both that they do both. And so we'll look at those remedies. We know that in the wisdom of Sacramento, and sometimes that there are certain there are some laws that prevent us from doing things that might appear obvious to us in regard to certain breeds of animal that may be inherently vicious, or some people think they're vicious when they see them attacking people or other animals or ripping their ears and so on. But so we have some restrictions, but we'll. And let me just say this too. I know in talking with Miss Ratty today that she's having, and the staff is having a great conversation with our captain, Captain Hawking, about ways that we can collaborate and coordinate with them on safety issues, on vehicle issues, on ways that we all work together as we should on these types of issues. And so I was very encouraged by Ms. Ratty's comments today about that conversation she's having with our new captain.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we don't allow dogs on Front Street, correct?
Right.
But you can take them on the pier if you're taking them off your boat, right?
And then there's,
Then you
this
have your-
is part of one of the issues that we're having, and this isn't really on our agenda tonight, but I'm so unbelievably furious at the situation that happened today. I'm going to try to contain myself. But there is a video of this attack that's online, which does nothing to be good for our community. And Paula, who's standing here in front of us now, has just gone through a similar incident, but dogs are not allowed on Front Street. And there is an issue with everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people wanting to get their animal registered as a service animal. And in your heart whether or not that animal is a service animal or it is your pet. And that's what's frustrating, is that we're seeing more and more dogs on Front Street, and that just the visual perspective of that makes everyone else think that it's okay to do that. And you know what? It's really not. It's not okay. And these situations are happening, and you're right. Dogs can come down the pier because you can't exclude a person coming in, a visitor coming in on a boat, or even somebody who lives in our community but lives on a boat. You can't exclude them from being able to have access to the other areas of town. But I'm pretty sure a service animal wouldn't be in the attack mode like what I saw on the video today. So I'm going to stop because I'm really
Okay, that was a
upset
good
over
little
this.
box.
And I just want to say you're exactly correct about, because I've been, I think code enforcement does the best they possibly can do, and I'm going to advocate to say too, they really need support and help. I mean, we may need someone else, and I have thought about this, but the issue of the dog on the Front Street is exactly what you're saying. They can't really even by law ask, and so that makes it so difficult for them to enforce it. But I was thinking that, I know we have a leash law and we have the dogs are supposed to be tagged, and I was thinking if that we really put a push on people saying you need to buy a license for your dog January to January. I think there's more dogs here than people now, and that maybe that would be extra funding for the city to be able to, because I know a lot of dogs here that don't have their license. And that might, if we put a push on that, put it in the paper, you wrote it in your manager's update that, that happens January to January. If you get it done before May, we'll even prorate for the rest of the year, because I think it does go January to January. I mean, it's just positive ways to make that happen. But, I have to say, I still see dogs off leash all the time, but they can't be watching everyone. And, right. and I'm still, it is a very fearful thing for me, and I hate it, and I'm so sorry I did not know about this today. But anyway, that was a suggestion that I was thinking in a positive way, how we can get the funding to maybe make a shelter.
Right.
So anyway, that's what I want to say.
Thank you. Okay. No, that's all right.
Good point.
Okay, let's go to the consent calendar.
Yes, Mayor and Council. Let me get to the action number one, the consent calendar. It's approved actions from the April 4, 2017 regular city council meeting. Action number two is expenditures submitted for approval. Recommended approved total expenditure amount of $1,380,043.13. Action number three is fiscal year 2016-17 third quarter treasurer's report. The recommended action is to adopt a resolution accepting the 16-17 third quarter treasurer's report. Action number four is an appointment of an alternate planning commissioner. The city did receive an application, and it's recommended to appoint Scotty Rolfson, thank you, to serve as the alternate planning commissioner for a term of 2 years. Item number five is wastewater treatment plant emergency repairs, rotary screen motor gear drive unit. The recommendation is to make a finding that an emergency exists. And by the way, we verify this, and Ms. Ratty and we make sure that these truly are emergencies and the action is needed. To ratify action by the Chief Administrative Officer and the Public Works Director to undertake necessary repairs to the wastewater treatment plant. Adopt a resolution authorizing the necessary repairs. A 4/5 vote is needed. Authorize the expenditures for the repair to be funded by Sewer Infrastructure Fund 108-25-6552 in the amount not to exceed $10,000. Item number 6 is restroom cleaning contract extension. Siria's Cleaning Service recommended action, approve final 1-year extension on the city's restroom cleaning contract with Siria's Cleaning Service, and authorize the city manager to execute the document. As noted in the report, there will go out to bid after this contract period, or during this contract period. Item number 7 is setting a public hearing date for the proposed rate changes to the sewer, saltwater, and solid waste service fees. The recommended action is to authorize city manager to set a public hearing for the city council to hear public comments on the annual sewer, saltwater, and solid waste fees. The public hearing shall be set not less than 45 days after notice of public hearing is mailed to the record owners of parcels upon which the fees are proposed. Item number 8 is to consider a contract with Host Compliance. Host Compliance, it's to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Host Compliance in a form acceptable to city attorney for an annual fee of $18,756. Host Compliance is cloud-based short-term rental management solution. Will help the city ensure that short-term rentals comply with the city's ordinance. And then the next item, it's noted that this is successor agency for the Avalon Community Improvement Agency. Number 9 is investment policy, recommended action, review and adopting the Treasurer's Statement of Investment Policy as updated February 2nd. Is that it? I think that's...
No, you got one more. Housing Authority.
10. My apologies. Number 10. Item number 10, Housing Authority actions. Recommended action is to approve actions from the December 15 Avalon Housing Authority meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Well, is there any items that you'd like to discuss?
I'd like to pull number 2 and number 8.
I'd like to pull number 9, please.
Okay.
I'm going to abstain on item 10.
What is it? What?
That's the actions because I wasn't here.
Oh, that's right. Wait.
2 and 9. 2, 8, and 9.
Okay. First of all, since
Actions from December 15, 2015.
We never approved.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to say, since we're not going to pull item 4, that I'd like to thank Scotty for coming today and putting your hat in the ring. I think you're going to find it invigorating. As the discussions we've already had today, you're going to find that there's a lot of work to do on the commission. You're working with a lot of good people. A lot of people have been there for a long time, and I know Amanda will be happy to work with you as well. So that's assuming you're approved on consent, but. Okay, 2 and 8.
And 9.
2, 8, and 9.
Oh, number 9?
Number 9. Hold on.
And 10?
That's my policy.
10, Foley's just abstaining.
Okay.
You know, Denise, I really want to thank you and all the staff for getting the agendas out so quickly. The problem is now I read them on Thursday.
Oh.
And so now it's like, oh my goodness, now I need to brush up again before I come in on Tuesday. So, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So I guess I can make a motion on 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10. A motion to approve those items.
Second.
Okay. And I just want to ask one question on item 2 on the. Are we getting the?
I pulled it.
It's pulled.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, duh. Okay, 1, 2. That's right. Okay. Oh, I see. Alrighty. Let's call for the vote.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Something happened.
I think it jumped off the counter.
Oh,
around his leg. It's more like it.
Jumped off the counter.
We have it on recording.
Thank you, Scotty. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Scotty. Congrats.
Well done.
And so, serious cleaning has also been extended.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Louise.
And then he's gonna. Okay. Okay. Item 2. Cindy Magoo, Cassidy.
I pulled this for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to do sort of my annual statement that as part of the audit committee, I do abstain from the decisions made on businesses that I'm financially involved with. Chet's Hardware, Northwind Refrigeration, Island Fire. I also abstain from all items on our agendas from the Island Company and items on our agenda from the Catalina Island Conservancy. So that's sort of my blanket statement that I've done the last couple of years. The second reason to pull this was the description changed a little bit this month, and I had an opportunity to speak with our finance director today, and going forward, there'll be just a stitch more information after items that say contract services, so that it at least puts it into a perspective, whether it's a particular job we're working on or whether it's a department. And with that, the explanation that you gave us last time, which was, sometimes there's a bunch of different invoices that are paid. And so I know you guys are looking in, and the bulk of a payment is kind of what you're listing. So I just wanted to get that out there as well. And thank you for doing that. And all of my other questions were answered except for the warrant for Susan Vanderpool, which was contract services for the elevator. And if this is obviously a much bigger discussion than item number 2 on our agenda, so we may need to bring it back for discussion at the next council meeting. But that $8,500, and I'd like to ask this question of Grants Administrator Audra McDonald as well, that if that project does not go forward, the city is on the hook for this $8,500. Whereas before, that could have been wrapped up into the CBGB funds.
CBGB. Yep.
So I would really like to get something of a proper update and then find out, because that's $8,500 that we weren't anticipating out of our general fund.
Right. No, I agree. And I'm glad you said who Susan Vander, because I was curious who Kevin Tager was.
The B guy?
Yellow Jacket.
The B guy?
He's part of the Yellow Jacket contract.
Oh, he's with Popeye?
Charlie and Honey.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So their payments are split in half, so they each receive a check.
Oh, okay.
And the girl was part of the design for the elevator for the senior house.
Right. Okay, and just real quick, just to refresh what's Michael Baker doing for us right now? Michael Baker International.
What is Michael Baker doing for us? Well, they're consulting with us on the charrette for the mole.
Oh, never mind. Okay, that's good enough. Yeah. Okay.
And for the design, and they're actually doing also the understructure design work for the mole.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just could we get on a future agenda the discussion about the elevator again and the.
Is this at the senior housing?
And then the lift.
This is the one where they promised to do one thing, and then after going all through design, then they decided to do something else.
Right.
But yes, okay.
And then they've said that they potentially don't want it. So
let's do something there.
Really concerned about this $8,500 that we've now paid for these contract services for the design, and with this project now we're sort of on the hook for that money if we can't wrap it up into a grant
we're also
spent a lot of time.
Very good.
Yes, we have had some conversation with the owners about their responsibilities since we were relying on their commitment to this, and we'll have to further explore that conversation with them about their responsibilities.
Well, the good news is that it's now we're saying, so it might help to push them forward to say, let's we're going to have a discussion on our council. Do you want to?
That's
Yeah.
good.
Thank you
So
so
that's
much.
going to be an agenda item?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Good. Let's do that. Because the seniors deserve that. They deserve that. They actually need an elevator. They don't need the lift. They don't need the hand crank thing. They need an elevator, a real elevator. I mean, at this point, that's a great point because it's been pushed back. The seniors are the ones who need that.
Yeah.
And we need to go forward with that. Absolutely.
I also failed to say island fire extinguishers as well, if any warrants come up on that in the next year. I did say it? Okay, I didn't really mark
You're good.
that. So with that, I would then make a motion to approve agenda item 2, the total disbursements.
Second.
Call for the vote. Okay.
All ayes?
Item number 8.
Here we go. I pulled that one too. Okay, so it's a bit confusing. The way that I was reading this is we want to do a contract with a company for $18,756 that they're handling our short-term rentals in town and managing those, making sure that they're following all of our rules. I mean, isn't that what we do as a city staff in general?
Why don't I give you a little bit more background than perhaps what was in the memo? The Host Compliance is a fairly new company that started a couple of years ago to satisfy the need of many tourist cities. Truckee was one of the first cities to be a customer of Host Compliance. I've talked to Truckee staff, and they are extremely satisfied with the products that they're receiving from Host Compliance. What Host Compliance does is they browse online for all the different sources for short-term rentals. So all the big ones like Airbnb, VRBO, etc., but also Craigslist and smaller ads. They find out how many rentals are there in the city. Then they work with the city to identify exactly what all the addresses are and find out whether they are paying the TOT and that they have the CUP, or are these rentals that are occurring without the CUP and without paying TOT. They've identified almost 450 rentals in Avalon. We're currently receiving TOT from about 275 rentals.
Oh,
that's 172 rentals that are under the radar right now.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of Host Compliance is to get them onto our radar. Then I would come back to you in a few months, perhaps after the summer season, and say, okay, we've identified X number of rentals. The potential revenue, if they were to start paying TOT, would be X dollar amount. I mean, roughly it would be maybe another $860,000 a year in revenue that we're not receiving, that we should be receiving. Or do we want them to cease and desist? Do we feel like they are contributing to our problem with workforce housing and we want them to cease and desist and rent it on a longer term basis? How we enforce that, I would have to research that. That's beyond my expertise, how we'd be able to even enforce that. Or do we do nothing? So we'd have three choices a few months from now.
And you're not going to have a number readily available, but hypothetically 400 rental units in town and we're only receiving TOT on 200. How many business licenses do you think we have? I mean, do you think there's a correlation between there's only 200 business licenses and possibly those are the 200 that are paying and these other ones don't even have business licenses?
I would assume that the additional 170 that we don't receive TOT from, I would assume that those do not have the CUP and they don't have the business license. But I don't know that. We would have to. identify them first, and then
Have you
compare our records.
A question for Scott. Have you worked with, because I know the VRBO thing, it's very controversial everywhere, but are cities able to get a handle on that to make it profitable for their cities, or how is that working in the real world? And maybe Jim knows too.
Well, in the real world, but the cities like Big Bear, which we represent, they'll have a third party do it, and it's a matter of if there's an upfront cost for their own code enforcement or contracting it out. And then what happens is that those funds we've shown have been recovered through increased transient occupancy taxes. That's assuming, because in those communities, in Mammoth Lakes and in Big Bear, the policy of the cities are to encourage and have those type of units.
What type of rental units?
Rental units, yes.
Yeah, but do they have something on the books that says VRBOs and those kinds of things are against the law in those cities?
Some cities do, some cities don't. Big Bear allows them. Mammoth, I think, allows them, but they're all though through a CUP. And Avalon, when we looked at this, was one of the few cities that had done this 20 years ago in anticipation. Most cities are now catching up, and what they're requiring is that if you've already got it, it's a non-permitted use, and you're given a certain number of years to go out and get your license to do it.
Years?
Yeah, because it's seen as a non-conforming use. So in other words, now you're saying you can't do it, so you're given a reasonable time to come into compliance.
And years is reasonable?
Well, for some cities, the council has made those judgments.
we would.
For Avalon, you don't have that issue because here you say you cannot operate this type of
because we've already
thing.
said this.
Yes, unless you've gone through the whole planning commission process. So anyone that is operating on that is going to get a cease and desist letter from the city immediately, which is what we've done before.
Yeah.
If someone is doing that, code enforcement sends a letter saying you can't do this. If you want to do this, you have to go through the planning commission.
Oh, is there a difference between the vacation rentals and just a year-round rental? I mean, as far as a business license goes, a year-round rental would just have to have a business license, correct? And then if you're a vacation rental, you need to pay transient occupancy tax.
30 days or under. If you
Okay.
So that's the thing. If you're just renting out, your house for a year, that's one thing. If it's 30 days or less, you have to go through the planning commission and get a conditional use permit for it.
Wow.
So they do the report and we find out there's a lot of people out of compliance. Then we have to start from there and go forward. There's no recouping anything that we didn't get.
Oh no, we have the ability to do that.
So
because for instance, what we would argue is if you actually want to get your permit, in order to get your permit, you've got to pay back. And we've actually done that on one of them about a year and a half ago. And then if they still don't, then it's a matter of what we call prosecutorial discretion. How much money do you want to spend pursuing it? And we can, in some cities, what they've done is they've gone to small claims court. So it doesn't cost you lawyer time. You just have a staff person go and file the small claims court, which are under $7,500. Anything under $7,500, a staff member can go to court.
And they put a lien on the property. Is what they do.
If they get a judgment.
If they get a judgment first.
Yes.
So one of the things that's attractive about this is that this 24/7 telephone hotline service that makes it easy for neighbors and other stakeholders to anonymously report and resolve issues with short-term renters without involving law enforcement officials. So these are the calls, the parties, hey, my neighbor is renting their place, but they don't have a sign in their window. I don't know who to call. That, which we do get a few of those. So that's attractive in here too. I would love to see as part of budget discussions, it's not for this item for tonight, but as part of the budget, to look at whether or not we have a significantly different price for business licenses for vacation rentals or these short-term rentals versus other licenses. And I know we can talk about that at the budget
In other words,
time.
based on the cost of service or the cost of at which it would fall under the 218, yes.
Yeah. So even though I know we're looking at the potential of increasing our TOT, which is great, we're still, right now, out of the gate, we're still agreeing to pay $18,756, even if we don't recoup something else. So I'm saying the cost of having to, the fact that we even have to do this is really unfortunate, because it's basically people breaking the law. So now we're spending taxpayers' dollars to have to bring in a company that's going to tell people you're not following the rules, when people know already they're not following the rules. So that's unfortunate, but there's a lot of positives that come from doing this. I didn't pull it because I wasn't in favor of it. I pulled it because I wanted to make sure that I understood exactly what it was going to do for us, and then also to look at business licenses going forward. And I like the idea of potentially a cease and desist. Maybe that can help us to put some of the housing back in our stock that we desperately need.
I'd rather look at it as helping keep the honest people honest, rather than, because it's people are shortcutting our system. But I like it. I would definitely. Well, I think we definitely have a responsibility towards the taxpayers. So understanding exactly that we could recoup this money, plus level the playing field for all the people that are paying into this. I mean, that's only fair. So what do we have to do in order to make this something that we accept and we go ahead and contract this out? Because obviously it's a job that we're not doing. We can't really do it. And so where do we go?
So,
vote yes.
So I will then, based on that, make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Host Compliance in a form acceptable to the city attorney for an annual fee of $18,756.
I second that.
And Jim, would you like a comment?
Oh, yes.
And I have a couple other comments too after Jim.
Okay.
Just as reinforcement for the need for this, I would say that we are increasingly on the receiving end of complaints from someone who has booked on a Craigslist or a VRBO, and they get here, and what they are finding is very different than it was represented, and they find they have no recourse, no one to go back to. We try and help them. The address isn't matching anything, so it's definitely a real issue.
Great, thank you.
I wanted to clarify a few things. For sure, I think this would level the playing field. One of the other strategies, besides going back and trying to recoup lost revenue and making them go through the CUP process, would be perhaps to have a grace period to encourage everybody to be in compliance all at once, and then receive the TOT. That would be just one strategy. We don't need to discuss that today, but something to think about when we bring this back to find out how many people are out of compliance. The hotline is a feature that is offered by Host Compliance, but that's not included in the $19,000.
The what is?
The hotline, the 24/7 dedicated hotline.
But it says it's included. Host Compliance's services include. Oh, but it's not in this particular one.
Yeah.
We could create a hotline ourselves and then take that information and transfer it over to them.
All in negotiations. I'll make sure that's.
Yeah,
I'll do my best to make sure that.
Please do.
It's really necessary.
We need that. Number's
because,
important.
I know that. I know there are a couple companies that do just a knockdown, drag out, great job with responding to calls and all of that. But then there's others that don't. And there's others, all you have to do is designate. I could designate you, Joe, as my person to call 24 hours a day. And, what happens if you decide you got to go over town for a night and then you're not there, or, you're
camping.
You're camping. That's right. So it's, if we can't get it through this, Scott, I think city managers on it, that we should have something where people can at least call and leave voicemails that we can get. Because I know we talked for years at the planning commission level that, folks would call the sheriff's department, but the sheriff's department wouldn't necessarily call the planning department at the city and say, hey, by the way, we got 4 complaints on vacation rentals last night. So there was a disconnect in the number of complaints that are truly out there. So I like this idea of the unbiased, make a call, leave a voicemail, and let us do what we need to do with it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. There's no further comment.
So to clarify something, though, so that particular 800 number would be a reference to these units that we're talking about, not all of them across the board, because Catalina Vacation Rentals, they pretty much take care of their problems.
No, this would be, so when each unit gets a CUP,
okay,
they can have their own 800 number for complaints. This is a number for people that are saying, hey, this guy's operating out of his house. They call it, and then I would imagine that we would get a list, and then they'd go ahead and do some enforcement action.
Anonymously, okay.
But I think what we can do is we can have a separate item later to have a general 800 number, anonymous tips for not just this, but for anything in the city, if we wanted to.
Yeah,
perfect.
Exactly. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. No further comment. Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Okay, number 9. This was pulled accidentally. I meant to pull number 8, but I just want to tell you that I think your investment strategies are right online, and I learned a few things from this report that you did, and I appreciate it. So I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 9.
I'll second it, but I think we can't invest our money outside of the state of California. I don't think we can invest our money outside the state of California. Might check with them.
Okay.
I don't.
Really?
Yeah.
That's scary.
Okay. Okay. Motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Thought we already did.
All ayes.
Now where are we? 11. Okay. Now moving on to item 11. Okay.
All right.
9, 10,
10,
11.
Ready? Mayor? Am I-
Yes.
Okay.
Authorization to engage the services of RSG.
Yes, Mayor, the city will well remember that in the early 1980s, the then City Council adopted a strategy that did not affect taxes, it did not affect fees, did not affect charges, and it was to recapture the growth of the growth in the property tax base. And that, in those days, not just from the city, but from other public entities, for the benefit of Avalon, and historically that has been a very beneficial to fund capital improvements. With the demise of redevelopment and the Avalon Community Improvement Agency, or as they used to call it, Avalon CIA, that some people did, that you lost that tool to undertake infrastructure. The state, after some years, recognized that this tool, having some kind of a tool to recapture growth in tax base, is a valuable tool to local governments that are, particularly in our case, where we're struggling to fund major capital improvements in the community. SB 628 is by Mr. Beal. It enabled the creation of an entity like, but not the same as, but like redevelopment, and it's called the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. Actually, during my interview, I believe I mentioned this option as one possible option to gain additional revenue without increasing taxes, without increasing fees, without increasing charges. That by formation of this, that we might be able to get money to fund major capital improvements in the city. The primary taxing entities, there are two. It's the city and it's the county. I have reached out to Supervisor Hahn's office, and I'll be talking with them about this district. It's not used extensively yet in California, but I know that and I don't mean to know what they will say exactly, but I know that Los Angeles County has been a great friend, both in redevelopment and in the city in general, and in brief commentary with the staff, I know that they are sympathetic to issues that are benefit to us. So, in summary, but what we need to do is evaluate: will the growth in the tax base of the city, after debt is covered through redevelopment, will the growth in the tax increment be significant enough to help us to fund capital improvement projects over a period of years? Would, for example, a bond be required, or is it something that we could fund on an annual basis, the latter of which I would prefer, because we don't run into bond costs? But in order to do this, we have to evaluate the issue. We have to go through a formal process, and RSG, who is already under contract with the city, who handles our ROPS, the authority's ROPS and the successor agency, they can undertake this study at a maximum rate of $17,500. If they're not participating in a lot of meetings, actually it's about $14,000. I recommend it highly, as I did in 1982 with redevelopment. I recommend highly that we engage these services to determine if we can get money that would benefit the taxpayer, the business owner and operator, and Avalon with monies that otherwise would not be available to us. I will say, unlike redevelopment, that schools are exempt from taking increment from the growth of tax base from schools. So that wouldn't apply here. There are funds available. As I mentioned, to an amount not to exceed $17,500 under General Administrative Professional Services, account number 10125-5005. There's, I believe, approximately $20,000 that is unspent in this fiscal year that I would ask that the money for this study come from that account. Should the infrastructure financing district be put in place? Should it be feasible and put in place? Just as with redevelopment, the initial costs that went into forming the ACIA, they would be eligible to be reimbursed to the city.
Being around here in 84, 82, I mean, this is not the perfect replacement for redevelopment, but it's a start. And I think we can get a deal with the county, and we can start banking some money to work on some big capital projects.
Okay.
And I would like to move to authorize the city manager to sign a contract for services with RSG for an amount not to exceed $17,500 for an EIFD study.
I'll second that. Further comments? Call for the vote.
All ayes. Oh,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good work.
Okay. So we had approved him. Now we're going back to the presentation and hear the presentation, discuss and provide direction as deemed necessary and appropriate.
So that's Val Frankel's presentation?
Yes, sir.
Can I just open up with saying something?
Sure.
So it was complete if we're talking about desalination, and that was fine and dandy what he said, but we asked for a complete study of the island-wide situation for water. I mean, that's what we asked for from Edison, what the assets are here on Catalina. Storage, topwater storage, reservoirs, what condition the pipes are in, bedrock aquifers, alluvial aquifers, desalination. Reclamation is kind of our baby, but that is the diversification. It's a very diversified water situation we have here on the island, and I wanted to understand it a little better in a whole nutshell. Basically, Edison gave us what they wanted to give us, and I don't think it was complete in what we asked for, but it's probably okay for Avalon for now to start, because we need to get the backing of the general public to understand that we're working for them and that we're delivering water to them. But I just don't think it was as complete as what we asked for. They gave us what they wanted instead of what we asked for.
If I could, sir,
please.
You are correct that in terms of a request on an island-wide basis, looking at the aquifers, their interconnections, the capacities, how much can you drill before you get saltwater intrusion? Actually, some of that's mentioned in the report. But what this study did for the first time is articulated Avalon's situation, Avalon's needs, desalinization, and steps that Edison is proposing to take over, if alternate one, as Mr. Frankel's recommending, if that's accepted, that what the steps will be, they're known, estimates of cost, and on which you could direct us or have us then collaborate with them on grant funding to take off the burden of the ratepayer. But still, your point is that there's still more information on an island-wide basis that is needed, and that would be for further discussion. I will mention to you also that in a conversation with Leslie Cleveland, who is the staff we'll be seeing in a few days from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, they have an interest also in that island-wide study, and they might even be willing to fund some additional work on an island-wide basis because of requests that they're receiving from Edison. So accepting this as a good piece is a beginning, and then we can move subsequently with other evaluations of information about the island itself.
Good start.
I think it is a good start.
The direction we want. Almost.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good start, and Dr. Frankel provided exactly what he was supposed to do, which was just the desal part of it. Different from that, the city has asked for sort of this water plan that I mean, let's be honest, I doubt we're going to get it. And it just doesn't, I mean, we've been kicking this, Richard's line, we've been kicking this can down the road for 8 months now. And
well, I actually think you have a major component of it here.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I certainly want to see us move forward. And, we're like getting way too close to all this Prop 1 funding coming out. And I really want to see us, get back at the table and everybody collaborating together and working together to make sure that any grant monies that we go out for, we do as, a fairly united front, even if it does involve Edison. But also, Edison may, for other parts of the island, they may go after a particular grant that may be available, and our city staff doesn't necessarily have to be doing the legwork for that. But the more we can be working together and provide a united front, the better we might be. There might be a project that does come forward, and they really need to see that we're working together and we're, supporting each other for other things. And I've heard it, and I agree to it that our city staff doesn't need to be the ones expending resources for things that don't necessarily affect Avalon, but I still, like the idea that we're at the table and we know what Edison is doing.
It absolutely affects Avalon. When the Howlands well dried up, they were taking water from Middle Ranch Reservoir. It affects Avalon. So that's why it's a resounding effect. When there's a problem at the west end, there's a problem at the east end. It all comes down to Avalon. Avalon, everybody has their base of operations in Avalon. So yes, we have to have our stuff together here, which is the desalination unit, but I am also concerned about the rest of the water on the island. I don't want to see it given away, sold, or anywhere appropriated to somebody else, somewhere else, in any way, shape, or form, because I believe it's all our natural resources that we need to protect, and we need to understand it.
If I may, to Councilmember Cassidy, I think you're correct. Now we have a blueprint. We have a blueprint now of what Edison is proposing to do in the city, and that is a beginning. There will be, and it mirrors some things that Carollo did earlier, but with more detail. And I know Dr. Frankel, before the presentation, we talked a little bit, and certainly. If we can get grant money to do phases 1, 2, 3 and alternate 1, then that might be something you would support and they would support. So it is. We now have a plan. We know where they're going. We know that how it's going to impact us based on their report, And I think we're in a position now to collaborate and cooperate because we understand what they're doing, and that's appreciated. I think from.
Do you want to
And
say
if we do one, we get off a Middle Ranch.
Right.
We
Yes.
don't affect Middle Ranch.
Yes.
anymore.
Yeah.
Which is
Yes.
good for the rest of the island.
If there is council direction to go forward, I just want to just put a caveat there. Their plan for the wells and the storage is consistent with what we presented to the city back in August. We want broad enough discretion to work with them because by direction, they limited their storage to Edison property and only Edison property. There may be other property out there that would be cheaper and closer to put storage on. And so and also they didn't look at the rehabilitation of the wells, and we may want to include the rehabilitation of the wells in grant funding. So we want to work with them and there's $10 million out there. We want to maximize
But
what
let
we
me
can
ask.
get for $10
Let me
million.
ask. Okay, you're basing the restoration of the wells based on Corolla,
That
or
was no.
based on your assumption.
No, that was Edison's. That was Corolla's report based upon what Edison told them when Corolla went out there and inspected it.
So-
They got that information from Edison.
So Corolla said, Edison is saying to replace the 3 wells.
No,
add 3 wells. No.
Add 3 wells.
Adding 3 wells, and specifically, he was asked today, was part of your task looking at whether the existing wells needed to be rehabilitated? He said no. And so when Corolla did their report, they talked to Edison about those wells, and those wells did need to be rehabbed. And so there may be some, and that's going to be probably the least expensive part of it because they just need to be cleaned up. But I just want to make certain that that may be part of flexibility, the grant funding that we're seeking.
So moving forward, because I understand your staff's going to be going to the Prop 1 thing, but and I'm sure Edison is too, and everybody's going to be reading them. But now is the time for collaboration, and I think how we, and Cindy, you can articulate this better, but how we decide how we're moving forward, our staff involvement in the process, what we're going to do, that needs to happen now because comments are going to need to be done by April 5th or something crazy.
No, what is happening is on May 8th, there's a meeting with the state where they're going to say, give us comments and we're going to maybe revise our draft. And then months later, there'll be, there may be a subsequent, because oftentimes this takes 2 or 3 public hearings to finalize this.
Well, I would like to have our staff get involved with Edison at this point and go through it, so that we're on the same page, because whether grants end up having to go in jointly or Edison has to do them, I think those decisions need to be made at some point sooner than later.
Mayor, I think we are in that position right now that we can now move forward.
Yes,
we can
that's what I'm saying.
collaborate and cooperate. And when grants come forward to you, you'll know that this is this part from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for 500,000 gallons. You'll know, that's part of that phase, alternate 1, first
I
phase.
really don't want us, though, to make sure that we're not competing.
No.
We
can't. We can't.
Well, and also because the grant that we're talking about is a $10 million grant just for desal, not anything else.
Right.
So whatever else is going on in the island or whatever other projects there may be, this grant is just for desal. And so the issue that we would be working on is to maximize what we can get for the $10 million.
Right. Okay.
And don't throw out Wrigley, because you don't need any land for Wrigley, which he didn't talk about.
Well, that's just it. That's just it, Ole. Are we going to accept the report and move with these recommendations? Or are we going to throw other stuff in there?
Well, I think.
How do we do that?
Part of my request in having the amendment was, there's a very, very, very tight time frame right now where while this, this package of paper, 150 pages, is in draft format. And pretty soon it's going to be in the final print, and that will be the guidelines for what we apply for. So for now, there's a couple questions that need to be answered, but we have a unique opportunity. We are in a unique situation that we have a unique opportunity to potentially change those guidelines. And that is that we have a water utility that is privately owned and a municipality that is very greatly affected. So, Edison can apply for grant funding on their own, and the city could apply, but that doesn't help us.
Right.
We really need to be working together and be
United front.
agreeing to what we're gonna go to. And then, of course, city manager knows we have these 3 pressing questions that need to be answered of who's going to be the applicant for the grant funding, assuming that there's a construction project, who's going to own the facility, and who would operate and maintain the facility. And questions 2 and 3 are already answered.
Yeah, Edison has the water rights. Edison is the one that develops, absent some other change that is not even before us. Edison is the one, the applicant, but I know that, and and as you're suggesting, that an application that has both the city and Edison's working together, supporting, is going to rate high. And I also know this: the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation will not fund projects that affect the city of Avalon without your approval. That's at least my understanding of what I was told. And so now it sounds like we've come together in a way that where we can be mutually supportive, at least as it relates to Avalon and then other opportunities. So
and they have, well, I don't know. I'm assuming we have qualified staff, but we have limited staff.
Right.
So
this is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
They have
it's
the
the
expertise.
most pressing issue that we have in the city right now is water.
Yes.
So as a policy decision, the council needs to decide. I guess I'm only going to speak for myself and say my recommendation is that, for example, these 3 projects that Edison has with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for the SCADA expansion, drought contingency study, and a 500,000 gallon storage tank, we should be supporting that. Yeah. That is in line with that's a policy decision.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, in addition to that, I don't, these questions about who's going to be the applicant, if the city's the applicant, then the city's going to be expending a tremendous amount of resources that we're not the specialists in. But if Edison is the applicant, and again, I believe this is a policy decision. If Edison is going to be the applicant, then they've got the specialists. This is what they do, and let Edison expend the resources to go after, to be the applicant and to do.
We
this.
should not be the applicant. We should be those supportive of an application that is supportive of goals of yours. And I think we are now aligned, or we're close to it if we're not right on the point. The city, even if we applied and got the money for a desal, we could not operate it under the current rules, under the current tariffs and the PUC regulation. So we want to be collaborative, and you now have the information that, as from a policy side, can help you for us to collaborate.
And again, I will say one thing. I did take this report and I gave it to Corolla. And one of the directives of the city was, once we get this report, to give it to Corolla, the engineers that we hired, and they said that this is consistent with what they've proposed.
Right.
So they are already on board with that. They do have a different cost estimate, so the cost may be actually a little bit lower, but it's always good to have a higher estimate when you're going and asking for a grant.
Yeah, and let me just to tag on, if I may, what Mr. Frankel, Dr. Frankel does in his report is, he has a 40% contingency, and that's, to be safe, I guess. Right. When you look at the $11 million in the Corolla report, and you look at $19 million, if you take 40%, of 11, you're up to about $15 million. Give her some change, and so we think the numbers may be higher if we get more grants. It may be it could be less if we can do it faster, and that's why with the LCP, the local coastal plan, that I'm suggesting that we include in your preferred alternative in that planning so that the EIR, the environmental impact statement, already discusses the issue, which speeds up the process, which reduces the cost of environmental review, so we're not duplicating. And that's what, with your permission, I mean, that's what we would like to do.
So yeah, as long as I mean, we have those couple policy things, and then I would just like to say if there is discrepancy between what we've talked about tonight and discussions going forward, I would much rather see an emergency meeting where the council can discuss it as a whole and make a policy decision, and that we get all the information and feel more included. We've gone so many months, and I keep thinking, did I talk to one person already about this topic? Can I not talk to another person? Or, it's getting so confusing. So I want to make sure that we follow the Brown Act also in that, the policy decisions come back to the council.
This is the first comprehensive, to say the reason the policy was set a long time ago prior to my arrival. So the reason that you're in a position, I think, to act as a body is that you have the information now, which you've been requesting, and that's good. The past is the past, and we can move forward now because we have a document that tells you what the roadmap is, at least as it relates to Avalon.
Awesome. Okay. All right.
No, you don't have to vote.
We have
You just-
one more item.
Yes.
Yeah, we have one more item.
Yeah.
So the only other item that was on there that we were going to talk about, and Scott mentioned it in his report, was the agreement with the county and Edison and the city for the additional $500,000. And I know every single person in this room has had conversations with others about this money, or members of the public and whatnot, but our goal should be to offset the ratepayers. Thank you. I almost said taxpayers. The ratepayers as much as possible. That was the spirit of the agreement. And I know that we've been arguing back and forth about, well, we're not getting this information, and we want this and we want that, but at the end of the day, there's $500,000 on the table that I'd love to see the ratepayers
Saves us
be offset.
$47,000 a year.
Saves us
Saves
what?
the ratepayers $47,000 a year. That's what Edison would be entitled to return on a $500,000.
And again, we are in agreement with that. The
I see what you're saying.
issue
It took me a
issue with
minute.
our agreement with the county is the agreement with Edison was titled a memorandum of understanding for additional water. And so what we want to make sure is when we're giving them the additional $500,000, that they're actually producing additional water.
Okay, well, we got that report, and what did that say? They weren't.
And-
So now what? So
But
we're
now
out-
they are. As of the beginning of the month, they are
and-
running both plants.
And
so
so,
they are
what our
producing it
agreement
now.
is going to provide, like the other agreement, the one difference is it's going to mandate that they give us the monthly report, so we
Right.
actually know that,
Right.
and then we're going to just change the language a little bit to make certain that we don't pay them the money until we've gotten some period, and the council will ultimately decide, of the actual additional water being produced.
So we're kind of just like starting over, starting a new calendar on the water.
We're just going
Production.
forward to making certain that they're actually
Because they gave us
producing
the old
additional
numbers.
water.
Right, and also, I mean, come on, we've all talked about this for years now, that we know what the draw is at certain times of the year, and we know that we don't have storage right now. Okay, that's just a fact. So it doesn't make sense to run both plants and run that water right back out into the sea. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So now that the draw from the community is high enough, they are running both plants, so they say, but they'll give us this report. But you couldn't during these last couple months that we're saying, well, you didn't, and I said it too, you didn't even run plant number 2. But
Is that the reason?
well, because plant number 1 runs in 4 different phases. So 50,000 gallons, you could turn on number 2, and it turns on 50,000. So you can
I understand
you can
that, but
run
was,
that.
Was
But
the
plant
reason
number 2 is all or nothing.
was the reason because they didn't need to produce as much, or it was a permitting reason?
It was
I think a little. There is a little bit of both.
Yeah,
From
it's-
my meeting,
I think there's a little bit of
Meetings.
both. It was,
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
permitting issues is what I've been told today.
It was
just today.
permitting issues?
Yes.
I'll talk to you offline about that.
Okay. Okay.
Just to say historically, historically.
Well, I mean, it is.
sorry, David. Sorry. I mean, I want to know why would we talk about it offline?
Okay. We had a discussion in closed session about this, and so I can, if the council is agreeing to waive the attorney-client privilege, I can talk about the permitting issue.
Of course, yeah. The public would want to hear it. Yeah, absolutely.
I think
If it's okay with
going
everybody else.
forward, though, I think we're. I think we're all pretty,
it's a simple, it's a simple thing.
Just make it quick and easy.
Can I disclose the legal position on the permitting?
What's the downside?
Oh, good question.
Well, he needs an answer, yes or no, from all the members of the
No,
council.
but I need to know what the downside is before we go.
Okay, so let me go to somewhere else then. Forget it, Scott. We'll talk about it later. I want to know why you guys want to take, or Ole, you mentioned we want to get off Middle Ranch. Do you mean you want to get off of the fact that we're basing our staging off Middle Ranch? Because Middle Ranch, we all know that the Middle Ranch water is 3 to 5 times less expensive. So I just want to know, and that's our emergency water storage. So I don't want to abandon Middle Ranch. I want to keep that running. I want to encourage Edison to continue pumping that water into Avalon. It's good water. It's got a lot of minerals in it. It's really good for you. And it's a lot less expensive than desalination units.
And our agreement
waters.
specifically says that Middle Ranch, when it's full, will be the primary source of water, and they will manage the desal plant
Right, okay.
to maximize the level of Middle Ranch, and always to use Middle Ranch as the primary source of water because it's cheaper, it's more reliable when it's full.
Okay, yeah. I just
and
I wanted to
so that's
clarify
all in
that.
there.
I mean, we all know that there's an issue with the tariff thing where they base the tariff off that, and maybe we can change that or adjust that, make an adjustment to that. But I don't want to abandon the water supplies all over the island that we all rely on here, but just as an emergency purpose, but also because the ratepayers need the protection of the council on that water. It's sacred to me.
Okay. And now we're going to
We
closed
have-
session. And look
We
at
have
what's
closed session, one item for the Housing Authority. This will be very quick. It is regarding the money that the state of California is not giving us for our Housing Authority.
but we want.
Okay. And we are back from closed session.
In closed session, the City Council, acting as the Housing Authority, unanimously authorized the Housing Authority to file an action against the state of California to recover the housing allocation that they've been denied.
Good night, Tony.
Good night, Tony,
Good night,
and
Dudley.
meeting adjourned.
Good night, Dudley. That was a good one, Richard.